Australia's darkest unsolved crime, the Gatton murders. Boxing Day, 1898. Three siblings leave a country dance and ride home through the warm Queensland night. They never arrive. By morning, they are found dead in a lonely paddock, beaten, violated, and laid out side by side as though arranged for display in some ritualistic fashion. The case would horrify Australia, not only because of the brutality, but because of the staggering failure of the investigation. More than a century later, the crime remains one of Australia's most infamous unsolved mysteries, the Gatton murders, the siblings. The victims were members of the Murphy family who lived just outside Gatton, a small farming town west of Brisbane. Michael Murphy was 29, described as hardworking and well-respected. His younger sisters, Nora, 27, and Ellen, just 18, were lively, sociable, and popular among locals. On December 26th, the trio left home in a sulky horse-drawn cart to attend a Boxing Day dance at a nearby hall. When they arrived, they found the event had been unexpectedly canceled. With nothing else to do, they turned back toward home, setting off into the still, starlit night. It was the last time they were seen alive. When they failed to return, their worried mother sent out searchers. The following morning, December 27th, a horrifying discovery was made in a paddock along their route home. The scene of the crime. The sight that greeted searchers was one of the most disturbing ever recorded in colonial Australia. Michael, Nora, and Ellen lay dead in the grass. Their bodies appeared deliberately arranged. Michael and Nora were positioned close together, while Ellen was a short distance away, as though someone had staged the scene. The violence inflicted upon them was shocking. Michael had been bludgeoned about the head, his skull fractured. Nora and Ellen had both been sexually assaulted before being killed, their bodies bearing signs of horrific injuries. The brutality suggested either extreme rage, sadistic pleasure, or perhaps both. Even more unsettling was the strange order in which the bodies had been left, almost ritualistic, fueling speculation that the killer had wanted to make a grotesque statement. Nearby, investigators found the family's horse still harnessed to the sulky. The animal had been tethered to a fence rail, patiently standing in the hot sun. Tracks in the dirt told a chilling story. The cart had been turned off the main road into the paddock, as though directed there by force or trickery. A bungled investigation. From the very beginning, the investigation was a disaster. Local police were untrained for a case of such magnitude. Incredibly, the scene was not properly secured. Crowds of curious townsfolk and onlookers wandered through the paddock, trampling potential evidence. No photographs were taken of the bodies in their original positions before they were moved. Fingerprints, a new forensic technique being pioneered overseas, were not collected. Even basic note-taking was inconsistent. By the time senior detectives arrived from Brisbane, much of the physical evidence had been destroyed or contaminated. Witness statements were contradictory, timelines were confused, and valuable leads slipped away. Many historians argue that if the crime had occurred in a major city rather than a rural town, it might well have been solved. Suspects and theories. Over time, investigators considered a wide range of suspects. Attention quickly focused on a man named Thomas Day, who lived near the crime scene and had a reputation for violence. However, there was never enough evidence to tie him conclusively to the murders. Others suggested that the crime might have been the work of a passing swagman, itinerant laborers who roamed the countryside looking for work. Swagmen were often mistrusted by rural communities, and in times of fear they made easy scapegoats. But again, no solid evidence emerged. There were also darker theories. Some speculated that the murders were not random at all, but targeted. Had the Murphys crossed someone in town? Did they know a secret that someone wanted buried? Or could the killer have been motivated by jealousy, lust, or revenge? Adding to the mystery was the curious arrangement of the bodies. Some believed this suggested a ritualistic or symbolic element, as though the killer was sending a message. Others argued it was simply the result of hurried staging, intended to mislead investigators. The shadow of Harry Power. One of the more intriguing leads involved a notorious criminal named Patrick Kenneth, later executed for murder. At the time of the Gatton killings, the Kenneth brothers were already well known in Queensland for cattle duffing, theft, and violence. Some historians have speculated that the brothers could have been involved, pointing to their known hatred of authority and willingness to kill. Yet no concrete evidence ever surfaced linking them to Gatton. Another theory pointed to a discharged soldier named Thomas Hall, who had a history of erratic behavior. Some locals whispered that Hall had been seen in the district at the time of the murders. Once again, though, evidence was lacking, and the trail grew cold. A community haunted. The Gatton murders cast a long shadow over the town. For months, fear gripped the community. Families locked their doors at night, armed themselves with rifles, and avoided lonely roads after dark. Gossip and suspicion ran rampant. Who among them might be capable of such evil? Was the killer someone passing through, or someone they knew? The Murphy family was devastated. To lose 3 children in one night under such brutal circumstances was almost beyond comprehension. The funerals drew massive crowds, and newspaper headlines spread the story across the nation. Australians were horrified not only by the crime, but by the police's apparent inability to catch the culprit. Legacy of failure. The bungling of the Gatton investigation became a national scandal. Public outrage over the case, combined with another notorious failure, the unsolved murder of a woman named Mary Jane Kelly near Oxley just months earlier, forced the Queensland government to take action. A royal commission was convened in 1899 to examine the state of the police force. The commission's findings were damning. It revealed widespread incompetence, lack of training, and poor leadership within the Queensland police. The Gatton case was held up as the prime example of how not to conduct a murder investigation. In this way, the tragedy did spark reforms. Over time, Queensland police adopted better practices, though for the Murphy family it was far too late. Why it remains unsolved. So why, after more than 120 years, does the case remain unsolved? The answer lies in the combination of factors: a contaminated crime scene, missed evidence, unreliable witnesses, and the absence of modern forensic techniques. By the time professional investigators became involved, the trail had already gone cold. Theories continue to circulate among historians, amateur sleuths, and true crime enthusiasts. Some argue that the most likely explanation is a lone killer, a man of opportunity, possibly with a history of violence against women. Others suspect multiple perpetrators, pointing to the difficulty of controlling 3 victims at once. Without DNA, reliable witness accounts, or preserved evidence, however, the truth is likely lost to history. The dark fascination. What makes the Gatton murders endure in the public imagination is not just the horror of the crime itself, but the eerie strangeness of it. The sudden disappearance of 3 siblings on a festive summer evening, the shocking brutality inflicted upon them, the deliberate arrangement of their bodies, and the sense of a community staring into the darkness, realizing that evil could strike anywhere, even in the heart of rural Queensland. For Australians of the time, it was a shattering event. For historians today, it remains a chilling reminder of how fragile justice can be when institutions fail. And for the Murphy family descendants, it is an unhealed wound, a mystery that may never be solved. Conclusion. The Gatton murders stand as one of Australia's darkest unsolved crimes, a case that exposed the failings of a police force, terrified a community, and left a grieving family without answers. More than a century on, the names Michael, Nora, and Ellen Murphy are remembered not for the lives they lived, but for the brutal fate they suffered. And so the questions linger. Who killed them? Why were they targeted? Was it random or deliberate? We may never know. But the haunting image of 3 siblings lying side by side in a lonely paddock remains etched in Australia's history, a mystery unsolved and perhaps unsolvable.